now available in paperback and e-readers. Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door takes on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed, all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess featuring a bonus pin-up and the other two books in the Cyber Goddess saga at online bookstores everywhere today. Recently, someone posted up some billboards in New York and Los Angeles trying to petition Warner Brothers Discovery to pick up the canceled Batwoman series for a fourth season. Now, according to these individuals, they are trying to wage a campaign to get the Batwoman show renewed for a season 4, saying that there are fans of this Batwoman show. Now, I have a critical question for all of those individuals who spent thousands of dollars on billboards to save Batwoman. Where were all of these so-called fans during the 4 years that the Batwoman show was on the air? Now, many of these people say that there was a group of Batwoman fans out there, but when we look at the ratings for the CW's Batwoman show, over the course of 4 seasons, these viewers were not really tuning in to the show. Now, your Batwoman started out very poorly in the ratings because most comic fans saw that the show was not following the source material of the 2011 comic that was critically acclaimed. And because most comic fans saw that Batwoman wasn't following the comic book, they practically abandoned it after the first episode. And over the course of the last 3 seasons, the Batwoman show's ratings dropped so low that they practically were at the level whereof most popular YouTube channels, and some popular YouTube channels were practically getting more views than the show, which cost $3 million an episode. In fact, many of the YouTubers who were practically watching the show to roast it were actually getting more views than the actual show was making. Now, the critical question I have to ask all of those so-called Batwoman fans is, why didn't you tell your friends about the show so that the show could get more ratings while it was on the air? For example, in contrast, your Superman and Lois continued to watch its audience grow and was basically making 1 million views every week when it first came on. So the CW actually would have more incentive to produce more Superman and Lois with Tyler Hoechlin than they would Batwoman, because they see the Superman and Lois audience growing. However, the Batwoman audience had continued to decline over the course of 3 years. So why would the CW want to continue renewing a show, hoping that the show would grow when the show's audience is shrinking? That's the critical question that many of the Batwoman fans don't want the answer to, because they don't understand how the television business works. Yes, your Batwoman is a show that represents something to members of the alphabet community. However, if those individuals don't come out and represent by watching the show, a TV studio cannot continue to renew that show for more seasons, because that show is costing that network money. And in the case of your Batwoman, your David Zaslav, who now runs Discovery Time Warner, just said enough was enough, because he was tired of losing money on many CW shows, including Batwoman, and this is why he wound up canceling Batwoman, because it made no logical sense for a netlet to continue spending $1 to $3 million an episode on a television show that was getting less viewers than a YouTube channel. Most of the YouTubers who roasted the show got more views for their channel than the CW, who was spending $1 to $3 million an episode on Batwoman, and they weren't generating any revenue, while YouTubers roasting the show were generating thousands of dollars of revenue for themselves in AdSense dollars. So why should a network continue spending money when they were losing money and they see that there's no audience there? That's the thing that the so-called Batwoman fans don't really understand about this whole thing as related to the television business. Now, as someone who has studied the entertainment industry for over 25 years, I understand the television business, and I've seen many shows get canceled that had cult followings like Freaks and Geeks, My So-Called Life, and many others like Sledgehammer, who I wanted to see get a second chance on television. Unfortunately, in the business of television, if you cannot generate the ratings, you're not going to get renewed. That's how the television business has worked for over 50 years. It is all about the ratings and the numbers, and I would have to say the CW was being very, very lenient as related to Batwoman, because I've seen shows get canceled after 3 or 4 episodes, like Once a Hero, which featured Captain Justice, after 1 or 2 episodes because they weren't pulling the numbers. And the CW was being very generous by giving this show 3 seasons, and I believe they were being extremely generous to give this show 3 seasons, because most times a network, especially on a very expensive show like a superhero show, they will pull the plug after 1 or 2 episodes don't do well in the ratings like Batwoman did. But they gave this show 3 seasons to get its act together, find its audience, and they were being extremely patient with Batwoman. But there comes a time when a network has to realize that they can't keep pouring money into a show because there are no fans there to watch the show. Now, if the so-called fans of the Batwoman show wanted to save the Batwoman show, they should have been waging their campaign in season 1, and they should have been petitioning your Caroline Dries to stop focusing on what many called far-left storylines that deviated from the source material. That was the time to try to save the Batwoman show, was when the show started out struggling, and they should have been telling all of their friends about this show and letting them know that they needed to watch the show, because in order for a show to stay on the air, you need to have the viewers watching the show. So that was the time to save the show, but you had people who wanted to save the show with the season 2 retooling, or the season 3 retooling with Ryan Wilder, but that was not the time to save this show. No, the show had severe structural damage, the same way 2004's Catwoman movie by Patoff had serious structural issues, and those structural issues were because Greg Berlanti and Caroline Dries refused to follow the source material. The Batwoman character could have been a very compelling character, similar to the Supergirl character at the CW, who also suffered from declining ratings, and that was all due to them going out here and pushing these identity politics over storylines in the comic book. Because if the Supergirl TV show had followed Peter David's amazing run on the character, that show would have gone out on a high note, but instead they decided to focus on identity politics The same thing with Batwoman, and that's why Batwoman wound up losing all of her viewers because the comic fans didn't get what they wanted in a show, just like they didn't get what they wanted in Supergirl. And again, how can you ask people to go out here and save a show when there are no real fans? Because fans would have been watching the show, and there would be enough of them to justify picking up this show. But we have we have many of these people with the billboards talking about fans, but where were all of those fans when it was time to watch the show? That's the critical question I ask of those waging this campaign, because if there were fans of this show, they would be out like the Superman and Lois fans, telling their friends about this show, going out here and watching the show every time it came on, and they would also be hitting up the CW website, watching back episodes. That's what fans go out here and do. But your Batwoman didn't have any fans, because when your show's ratings are under 300,000 viewers or even 200,000 viewers, that shows that there aren't many fans out there for a show that's supposed to cost $2 to $3 million an episode, or $1 million an episode. If there were fans of this show, you would be building that word of mouth, you would be getting the numbers up every week, but your Batwoman had no fans, and that's the reason why nobody was watching the show, and the ratings were as poor as they are. So what we have here with these billboards is a gaslighting campaign to try to gaslight people into believing Batwoman had fans, but Batwoman didn't have fans as related to this TV show, because it had alienated all those comic fans when they decided to go against the source material, and they decided to go out here and then try to shoehorn a black actress in the role with this Ryan Wilder character, further driving away more viewers. And this attempt to try to save this show is as pathetic as the whole overall show was, and this whole overall Batwoman show was an absolutely terrible program that no one wanted to watch, because there was nothing there as related to the Batman comics, nothing there as related to Batman's part of the DC universe. It was all one big virtue signal that was turned into tokenism, and this tokenism, it has found out that it just hasn't profited the CW's new bosses, so they're canceling this show to cut their losses on a show that had no audience whatsoever. Now, if you want to check out my books featuring heroines in fantasy settings like the Isis series, the Eastdeem series, and the Spinsterella trilogy, you can pick up those books featuring black heroines on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me do more comic and fantasy related videos, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, and my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, Eastdeem Horror of the Hyena Woman. Hell's aspiring angel takes on a wicked werewolf in this action-packed all-new Eastdeem series adventure. Get Eastdeem Horror of the Hyena Woman in paperback and e-readers today.